As you may or may not know, my wife and I just got back from Vegas. It was a great trip. We ate, we drank, we had a blast. But then we got home and looked at the credit card, and I gotta say, it doesn't matter how much fun you're having, $25 for a drink is a ripoff. Frickin' Vegas. I hate getting ripped off, and so do the lads over at Harry's. They spent years watching the razor blade companies rip people off and said, no more. Not all heroes wear capes, my friends, and they want to prove that they're legit by offering you hot dogs a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/RTG. I've been telling you about them for months, and I'm genuinely proud to have Harry's as a sponsor of this show. I wasn't kidding. The plastic, futuristic-looking crap razors you get at the store are overpriced and they're poor quality. Harry's blades are crisp, clean, and classy. They're the kind of razor you'd expect your grandpa to have on his bathroom counter. And most importantly, they work. Shave after shave, they're so smooth, they're precise. I used to go through the crappy store blades all the time, but Harry's are built to last. And they're not just better quality than the other names, they're more affordable. And they deliver. Just set your schedule, and for as little as $2, new blades, shaving creams, lotions, everything you need, right to your door when you need it. I genuinely cannot think of a reason not to try Harry's. And I'm not just saying this because they're sponsors. They're the best shaving supplies I've ever used. Try them out, and if you're not happy, your shave's on them. And unlike the other subscriptions, they're really easy to cancel if you want to too, which is a nice bonus, but believe me, you're not going to want to cancel. Getting ripped off isn't funny. Switch to Harry's. Get started with a $13 trial set for just $3 at harrys.com/RTG. That's harrys.com/RTG for a $3 trial set. Hey everybody, I'm going to be away from the internet for a few days due to a personal situation that I'm kind of dealing with. There may not be any streams or podcasts this week. You can keep an eye on my social media, Twitter and Instagram at MemberTheGame, to kind of know when things are getting back to normal. Shaylee, Molly, and myself were all fine. No worries there. But aside from that, I'm just going to ask that everyone please just respect our privacy for the time being. Thank you for your understanding and my sincere apology for the missing content and any inconvenience this may cause. In the meantime, Metroid Dread was named the Game of the Year by both our community and as my personal pick as the best game of 2021, and I reviewed it on Expansion Pass back in October. So that's what you're going to hear this week. It is a spoiler-free review until the very end. There is a short spoiler cast tacked on. I make sure to warn you guys before the spoilers start. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks again for all the love and support and your understanding, and hopefully we'll be back next week, okay? Thanks, everybody. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 82nd edition of Remember the Game Expansion Pass. It is one of our Patreon exclusive weekly podcasts here at Remember the Game Industries. My name is Adam Blank, and if you're hearing my voice, maybe seeing my voice, perhaps even watching my voice live on the old stream box, whatever, if in any way you're ingesting this content that I just created, at some point you've decided to throw a couple of bucks of your hard-earned money at me over on the old Patreon service. And if that is the case, before I get into anything, thank you so much. I really sincerely appreciate it. It feels like we're breaking records around this place every week. So I just thank you. Thank you all so much. And this week for Expansion Pass, I'm going to be dropping another review episode on you geeks. I had said a couple of months ago that I was shooting to do more review episodes, and dang it, here I is. I'm doing it. A couple weeks ago, I reviewed Deathloop for the PlayStation 5, which was one of my most anticipated games of the year. And now this week, we're reviewing Metroid Dread for the Nintendo Switch, which is another of my most anticipated games of this year. And it's fucking wild because they released Deathloop and Metroid Dread weeks apart, and then they tacked back for Blood On afterwards. And I know it's not like one person. Can you imagine if like the game developers then went and got publishers, but then the publishers all went to one company that was like, all right, we'll put all these games together. Like one company was just calling the shots for everyone. When I say they, that's who I'm implying is this fictional company that fucking publishes every game all the time. But like, that's like, Deathloop, Metroid Dread, and Back for Blood is about the best month of new releases, at least as far as I'm concerned, and to tailor to my tastes, in fucking forever. That's just fucking unreal. Plus Far Cry 6 was in there, and I want to play that eventually. Plus fucking Monkey Ball was in there, and that I'm actually starting to come around. I'm kind of tempted at some point to pick up Monkey Ball. It looks fun. But anyway, tons of crazy games coming out right now. It's fucking wild. So we're talking Metroid Dread. As always, my reviews are 100% spoiler free. So if you've not played the game or you haven't finished the game, don't worry. I'm not going to ruin it for you or anything. I do get into some of the stuff that happens in the first couple of minutes, the little prologue to the game, but I don't really feel like that's going to spoil much for you because you're going to see it literally before you can move Samus. This is shit that they're going to show you. And then I'm going to get a little bit into a couple of the enemies in the game, but I won't spoil anything about when they show up or how to fight them or anything like that. I'm just going to... Like the E.M.M.Is, if you don't know, you're going to find out when we get into the review. There's something that everybody knows about. They're kind of stealing the show with Metroid Dread, but I won't spoil anything big at all, I promise. So I will be tacking a short spoiler cast on at the end of this podcast like I usually do with my game reviews, but I'm going to warn you, I'm going to play music, I'm going to count it down, all that stuff first. You're going to have tons of time to bail before I start telling you talking spoilers and tell you about how Samus is actually just Princess Peach. Oh, fuck. Never mind. Skip. I'm kidding. Although I will say, well, I am kidding, dude. What a crazy twist that would be if it just turned out that Samus was actually Princess Peach and she just lets Mario save her to make him feel better about himself, and she could just fucking destroy Bowser in 3 seconds. But she's like, no, it's fine. Go ahead and kidnap me. It makes you feel like a big man. And then this is really what she's actually doing in the, when no one sees her. She's taking off in outer space and fight. Her ship kind of looks like a mushroom head too. So anyway. Great fucking game. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know if that's spoiling the review, but it is a great fucking game. Is it worth all the hype it's getting? I'll tell you that at the end of my review. And we're going to get there in just a minute because, as you know, part of your Patreon perk is a peek past the podcast here at Remember the Game Industries. How do I fuck up people's letters all the time, but I never miss that? I don't get it. But anyway, it's a quick peek past the podcast here. So if you could just empty your pockets, remove your hat, step through the metal detector over there, and I will tell you what has been going on around here over the past week. I always get anxious going through the fucking metal detector at airports. I don't know if that's I don't know if any of you, I have nothing on me. I have nothing to be scared of, but you step up and they're like, go ahead, step through. And it's just, you take that and then you step through, and then when you get through and it doesn't go off, you feel like you pulled something, like you pulled a fast one, even though you're not doing it. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. I feel like I fucking pulled off something sneaking through there. And anyway, thank you for all of the feedback regarding this past week's expansion pass, which was my top 10 must-play retro games. It was a countdown episode. I did not expect that list to generate the heat and the controversy that it did. It queued up a lot of discussions. And heads up, I am going to spoil a couple of my picks here quickly. So if you haven't listened to last week's podcast yet and you want to be surprised, you might want to skip ahead about 90 seconds. I think the comments that I heard the most from the community were, first of all, it was insane that I left Game X off the list with Mario 64, Super Mario Brothers, and Link to the Past all popping up, and a lot of people were surprised that Sonic 2 was as high as it was on my list. So obviously this was a very subjective topic, right? Like, what makes a video game must play? That's something that you could ask 10 different people and you could get 10 different answers. So I really did work hard on my list. I tried so hard to try to cover every major console, genre, era, all the big franchises. I did my absolute best to try to cover as much as I could. And you know what? I fucking stand by my list because I feel like that list of 10 games gives players a taste of just about everything. Try to make a list of 10 retro games that covers everything from the PS2, Xbox One, GameCube era back to the NES. Very fucking difficult. It's really tough. Ocarina of Time got on my list while Link to the Past didn't, and I think Link to the Past is the infinitely better game, but I think Ocarina of Time is far more important. Link to the Past was just a great SNES game, right? Ocarina of Time fucking changed the game forever. Mario 3 got in on my list because it levels up Super Mario Brothers in literally every way. It's the best game the NES has to offer. Super Mario World is the best showcase of what the Super Nintendo had to offer. And then I was like, well, now I don't have room for Link to the Past because I've covered the Super Nintendo with Super Mario World. Mario 64 was fucking massive, but Ocarina of Time was bigger in my opinion, and I didn't want 3 Mario games on my list, and I stand by that list. It was very difficult. I encourage feedback. I had a great time debating that list with the community. So thank you for all the passion and for all the replies. It was a lot of fun. And if you have not listened to it yet, I'm telling you, check out Remember the Game this week. I'm really proud of all of our podcasts. There's the voice crack. Whoa! I'm really proud of all the podcasts we put out. But I really do feel that Remember the Game this week is one of the best episodes we've ever done. I interviewed a former strategy guide author about what it was like writing those strategy guides back in the day. And speaking for myself, I found it captivating while we were talking. I basically just shut up by and large and just let Doug, my guest, talk about what his time was like in the industry. And I was just fascinated by it. Like, some of my favorite episodes we've done are the interviews. When we talked to Nicholas Picolis from Video and Arcade Top 10, we talked to Summoning Salt, the world record holder for fastest Mike Tyson KO and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. Now we've talked to Doug Walsh, the 18-year veteran of writing strategy guides. I have a couple more ideas for episodes like that moving forward. I'm just trying to space them out so that I don't do them all together or anything like that. So we're recording the Diddy Kong Racing episode this weekend. That's probably going to be next week's episode. I know a lot of people are excited about that. I really liked that game. I'm actually looking for kart racer suggestions, okay? So feel free to DM me your picks, but with a couple stipulations. I have Crash Team Racing, Diddy Kong Racing, and Mario Kart and all those games covered, okay? I'm only asking for recommendations of good kart racers, please, because I'm going to be dropping my cash on these games. So if you send me something like Garfield Kart, I'm never listening to anything you say again. If you feel there's a kart racer out there that you truly believe stacks up and is in the same class as Diddy Kong Racing, Mario Kart, and Crash Team Racing, let me know. I'm interested, okay? I think that's, and I've been streaming a little bit more lately. I've been doing some Back for Blood streams. It feels weird streaming that game because I almost completely ignore the chat while I'm playing because I'm just trying to keep up with Back for Blood and talk to my teammates. But I really like streaming. I just don't know what I'm doing. Maybe it's no big deal to not acknowledge everything the chat says while you're playing. I don't know. My buddy Mike showed me a cable that I should pick up if I want to be able to stream the voice chat of our game while I'm playing. And I think I'm going to look into it because that's been the one complaint about the Back for Blood streams has been that you can't hear the voice chat. So I'm going to look into that cable. I just wanted to see if Back for Blood was something I wanted to play on stream a little bit more before I invested that money in it. But I think it is. So I'm excited about it. And that's something I think we're going to do moving on. Okay. Anyway, I think that's everything. That's enough. Let's talk Metroid Dread. That's why you're here. I'm going to cue up some Metroid Dread music. There it is. And when that music stops, I'll drop my spoiler-free review of Metroid Dread for the Nintendo Switch. Let's go. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Everyone that listens to this podcast knows about our illustrious CEO, my dog Molly. But the other silent partner behind the scenes is my wife. And let me tell you, my friends, a 17-year relationship with another person that has to talk to and live with you is a lot harder to maintain than one with a dog. We've had our ups and downs, and as you all know, a relationship isn't all sunshine and rainbows. They can be a lot of work. You get out what you put in when it comes to relationships, and talking to a therapist can be a fantastic way to put in some work. They can help you work through your issues, learn to communicate better, and even just provide you with an ear to bend when you need it. I've talked to my therapist about my relationships, especially when it came to my stand-up comedy career and how much I was away from home, and they helped me work on ways to keep my relationship strong even when I was out on the road. It turned out our relationship was actually better when I was out on the road, but that's a story for another day. And I know, right? Therapy. Who has the time these days? BetterHelp hears you, and they're making it easy. Fill out a quick form online, and they'll match you up with a therapist that suits your needs, and that'll work around your schedule. You pick the meet times, and you can get your therapy fix from anywhere, over video, phone, or just chat. Become your own soulmate, whether you're looking for one or not. Visit BetterHelp.com/rememberthegame today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/rememberthegame. All right, now, do you geeks remember when Nintendo announced this game? I didn't look it up for the podcast, but I'm 90% sure it was at their E3 Nintendo Direct. I'm almost positive it was at the E3 Nintendo Direct. And it was just one of those record scratch moments. We were all hoping for a surprise. It was a Nintendo Direct. We're like, come on, give us some big fucking thing we didn't see coming. And I feel like Metroid Dread was the surprise we didn't know that we wanted. At least I didn't. I won't lie to you. I was hoping for Mario Kart 9, or I was hoping for a new Donkey Kong game, or maybe F-Zero. I knew I was pushing my luck with F-Zero, but I was hoping for something like that. But a new a new 2D Metroid game, that was pretty fucking rad, man. And you know what's wild is that we all knew that we know that Metroid Prime 4 is in development. And so I think everyone had to assume that that's what all the Metroid nerds are working on. They're working on Metroid Prime 4. And then just out of nowhere, Nintendo drops a fucking 2D Metroid on us that's been in the works the whole time. And to their credit, dude, shit does not leak from Nintendo. I'm telling you, the fucking Yakuza own them, because nothing leaks from Nintendo ever. Nobody knew this game was coming. And then they were like, and it was one thing for them to be like, yo, we're making a 2D Metroid game. But then they were like, oh yeah, and you'll be playing it in like 2 months. And it was like, what? I'm still floored that wasn't their one last thing. How they didn't close the E3 showcase with that, I'll never know. But as soon as they said that we were going to be getting our hands on that game in October, it jumped to one of the top spots on my most anticipated games list. I know it did for many of you as well. It's a direct sequel to Metroid Fusion from the Game Boy Advance, which I recently played as well. So that got me even more excited because I played the prequel and I knew what was coming. So I think some of the most common questions that I got going into this episode were, do you have to play Fusion first? And is Dread any good? And I'll answer with no with a but, and yes with an if. It's not that cut and dry. And don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything from Metroid Fusion either. There is an episode about Metroid Fusion in the Remember the Game archives if you're interested. I do think we spoil most of the game in there, though. So just be aware of that before you go listen to it. So I'm going to break this game down. I'm going to let you know what I think of it. We got almost 40 comments from the community this week. I couldn't get them all in, but I did squeeze a few in, including this one from Brian Ransom, who wrote in on Patreon and said, so I've never played a Metroid game and hardly know anything about the story or games. In terms of story, where would I start? I mean, I guess with the NES one, but I gotta be honest, and maybe some Metroid fans will disagree with me, I don't really think it matters that much, Brian. It's not that there's not a story to the Metroid games, but this isn't like a fucking season 3 of a TV show where you're lost if you jump in and didn't watch the first 2 seasons. I've only personally played 3 Metroid games to completion, and that's Fusion, Super Metroid, and now Metroid Dread, and I don't feel lost. They do a pretty good job of at least setting the table for you, especially in the later games as the story starts to pick up. Like I said, this is a sequel to Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance. But Metroid Dread does explain the basics of what's going on in the universe before the game gets going. I do think you'll enjoy I think you'll enjoy Metroid Dread a little bit more if you have played Fusion. Plus, I think Fusion is a great game that's worth playing. It's just not readily available. It's not on the 3DS. It's not on the Switch anywhere. It's a Game Boy Advance game. So if you can't get your hands on Metroid Fusion, I wouldn't sweat it, and I wouldn't let it stop you from playing Metroid Dread. You'll be fine if you hop into this game and play it. What I will say is I think if you play Metroid Dread first, I love Super Metroid. That's a great fucking game. I do think Super Metroid might feel a little ancient compared to Metroid Dread. And I'm not saying it's bad, but Metroid Dread is like Super Metroid on fucking steroids. So the one thing I would be aware of is if you play Metroid Dread first, the other games are still fully playable, but they're going to show their age. Maybe that's the right way to put it. But like I said, I've only played Fusion and Super Metroid, and I felt more than equipped to deal with anything that Metroid Dread threw at me. I didn't feel lost or anything like that. There's a little story primer at the very beginning of the game that'll get you caught up enough that at least you're aware of why you're on this planet and what the fuck is going on. Metroid Dread has its own story that it tells while you play. And I think it's a good story. I don't think it's not fucking Shakespeare or anything like that. I feel like it's one of those games where the story is there if you're interested, but if you just want to go in and shoot aliens and explore, the story's not going to get in your way. You're not going to feel lost. It's quite obvious very quickly into the game that there's a bad guy, you're the good guy, you got to get your powers and then go kill the good guy, or the bad guy. It's very basic stuff. So, without any, so to give you a quick summation of the story, this is all stuff that's explained in the first like 90 seconds of the game before you even move Samus. So that's all I'm going to get into as far as the story goes. Samus is going to another planet to investigate something. The powers that be had sent these automated robots called E.M.M.Is to the planet beforehand to investigate, but then they got like, they lost contact with them and shit went to hell. So you go there as Samus to try to find out what happened. Shit hits the fan and you're off to the races. That's as caught up as I'm going to make you as far as the story goes. Man of few words wrote in on Patreon and said, man, what a game. The new E.M.M.I gimmick added to this 2D Metroid actually worked. And like the title, filled me with a genuine sense of dread every time I saw that I had to enter one of their zones. It felt very similar to Super Metroid and fixed the limitations and mistakes from that game, like the god-awful wall jumping. This is an amazing game overall. I'll get into the wall jumping in a minute, but you're right. And that was the number one thing I was thinking of when I said the problem with playing Dread might be that Super Metroid feels just a touch archaic. The wall jumping in Super Metroid is that game's only real wart, and the wall jumping that game fucking sucks, and the wall jumping in this game is spectacular. But we'll get there when we get to the controls. Man of few words brought up the E.M.M.Is, and I brought them up as well. Not the shitty award show, the E.M.M.Is, these fucking robot human dog android things that were sent to the planet before you went there, and they're almost the star of the show this time around. And I mean, I guess maybe it's a spoiler to reveal that you interact with them, but I think everybody knows that. I'm not going to explain really why you're interacting with them, but you do have to deal with them. And when you come across them, like they kind of stalk you. It's just, and it's fucking just tense as shit. It's awesome. That dread is such a perfect word to explain whenever you go into an area and you know one of these motherfucking E.M.M.Is is in there. You get this sense of dread because you're like, they will fuck you up if they get their hands on you, and you can't kill them straight up. You can't fight them. So the game teaches you very early on to avoid them like the plague and run like a motherfucker if they find you. And I think it's the coolest part of the game is interacting with the E.M.M.Is. I think some people probably found them a little bit frustrating because it's about, I would say it's about a 90 to 95% death sentence if they catch you. I'll explain why it's not 100% in a second. I thought it was outstanding. The fucking tension and the dread that comes in when you're interacting with these guys is fucking incredible. Because like in almost every other Metroid game, and there's a couple of minor exceptions, and I'm not going to spoil those because people haven't played the other games, there's the odd enemy that you have to just run and hide from because otherwise they're just going to kill you if they get their hands on you. But I don't remember any of them feeling as tense as this. This is just fucking remarkable. And the controls in this game are so goddamn good. And just the feel, I'll get more into the controls in a second, but the feel of running, sliding, climbing, wall jumping to just get away from this fucking predator robot that can just like contort itself to go through just about anywhere in any of these levels. Once it finds you, it'll stop at nothing to catch you. It's just so fucking exhilarating. They're the most exciting portions of the game, in my opinion, to be honest. And the E.M.M.Is are just such a fucking rad design. They look cool. The way they kill you is cool. The way they hunt you is cool. The way that like they have like a I don't know what you call it, like a sonar kind of thing, like their, you know, like their vision, like the camera in front of them, and you can see exactly what it can see, and your goal is to just stay out of that. But like the way that like you think it's gonna go one way, but then it can like totally contort itself and go a different way entirely and climb through a crack in the wall, and all of a sudden it's above you when you thought it was gonna go away instead. It's just, oh my god, it's so awesome. And like I said, it's about a 95% death sentence if they catch you, because you can explain, or pardon me, you can escape if they catch you. I wrote explain in my notes to explain how you can get away. When they get their hands on you, you're fucked. You can't, it goes to a cutscene, you can't fight them, but you have two fraction of a second instances where if you hit the X button at the right moment, you'll counter what they're doing with like a punch or a kick. I just kicked my desk and I was trying to show you how to kick even though no one can see my feet, but you'll counter them with like a little punch or a kick, momentarily stun them, and it's your chance to get away. But you can't just mash X. Like you only get one shot at each of those two counters, and your timing needs to be fucking on point. And I don't know if there has ever been a feeling in any video game ever as satisfying as nailing the escape. That fucking half a second moment from an E.M.M.I, and you just hit them with an elbow and they stumble back and you can run like hell. It is, oh my god, it's so fucking good. And then, oh, just so incredibly designed. I I've seen a couple people complaining about them and saying that they're too hard. I just don't think you get what the game is trying to do, because they're not. They're fucking spectacular, and I love them. But now that does bring me to the difficulty of the game, which is something that I wanted to talk about. Not just escaping the E.M.M.Is. I've just seen people online saying that this game is too hard. I disagree. And you know what? The thing about it is I usually get irritated when like somebody posts on a message board or on a Reddit or something, saying that they're finding something really difficult and they're stuck, and the comments are all "you suck" and "get good" and shit like that. I wouldn't tell someone that finds this game too difficult that they suck, because this game is very difficult. I don't think it's soul-crushingly difficult. I think it's tough but fair. I think this would be a horrible game to suggest to someone that doesn't play video games. My girlfriend likes Samus. She doesn't play a lot of video games. She's played Smash Brothers with me and our nephew Ben a few times, and she always picks Zero Suit Samus because she thinks Samus looks like a badass. I'm like, yeah, she is a badass. So when she knew that I was playing a Metroid game, she watched a little bit because she was like, oh, wow, I've always kind of wanted to play one of her games. But then she saw how difficult it is, and she hardly plays video games, and I don't think she would enjoy it. There's no easy mode. There's no way to turn the difficulty down. I don't think this game is for a casual gamer. You're going to get fucked up. Dread is not going to hold your hand. It expects you to get, I hate to say it, but Dread expects you to get good, or it's going to fucking wreck you. Straight up. It's going to fucking destroy you if you don't get good. But I feel like it does a good job of teaching you how to get good. I feel like it lays the breadcrumbs on the ground, and it lays out a trail to teach you. The E.M.M.I encounters get more intense as you go. So when you find the first one, I probably got killed more by the first E.M.M.I in that game than I did from all the rest of them combined. Because when you come across the first one, it's going to kill you over and over and over until you figure out how to get away from it. And there's no way to avoid it, and it's going to find you. And the game, and I don't think this is a fault, but the game kind of shoehorns you down this alley where they're like, you're either going to figure out how to get away from that E.M.M.I, or you're not going to get any farther into this game. It's not being cheap about it. It's teaching you. And I think that's a great mechanic. I think it's really, really well implemented. And if you can just get past the initial frustration of being like, holy fuck, this is hard, you start to realize like it's tough, but it's fair. And that's the best way a game can be as far as difficulty, is tough but fair. And it's the same thing with the enemies in the game. Every video game with enemies in it in the history of the world, the enemies get tougher as you progress through the game. They progressively get harder and harder to deal with. Metroid games give you all kinds of new abilities and weapons as you play, and as you pick those up, the enemies get tougher, but the game expects you to use the new tricks that you've picked up to get past them. And I think this is an incredibly difficult game. I don't know if I'd say that. I think it's hard. I wouldn't put it in the I wouldn't put in the conversation of like a Celeste or a Super Meat Boy or a Spelunky, those games that are just basically designed to kill you over and over. I don't think this game is like that. I think that Metroid Dread is hard, but it rewards patience, it rewards practice, and those are the difficult games that I get off on. Stuff like this, stuff like Cuphead, like Shovel Knight. If a game is tough but fair, I will play the fuck out of it. And that's what Metroid Dread is. I think another thing that could frustrate players is the exploration, and that kind of ties into the difficulty. I think like the levels themselves aren't going to kill you, other than when you fall into lava. Like going underwater won't hurt you. When you go into like a cold level, it'll hurt you, but the game indicates it right away. As soon as you go through a door, you're in a sub-zero area and it's hurting you right away. You just turn around and leave again. Like the game, like there's no, you can't fall into like a hole and die. You're not going to run out of time, stuff like that. The levels aren't going to kill you, but it's almost a guarantee that at some point, and I would be interested to know if anyone didn't feel like this. At some point while you're playing Metroid Dread, you're going to think the game is broken and you've got nowhere to go. You're going to think you've fucking soft locked yourself into a corner and Nintendo fucked up and put a way for you to get trapped and you can't escape it. It never is. There's always a way out. There literally might be one hidden block in a wall somewhere that you can shoot to remove it, and you can duck underneath it, and then you can keep going. But the thing is there's not going to be any indicators to tell you where that block is or how you can get out. And honestly, probably my only real criticism of this game is that they don't do a great job of explaining to players that, you know, hey, if you're stuck, start shooting. You're going to find a hole somewhere. And I think Metroid veterans are going to know that, but a new player is going to have no fucking idea, because a lot of the holes you need to find, especially in the early going, there is absolutely no indicator that's where you need to shoot the wall. The wall just looks the same the whole way, but if you shoot this one area, a single block will open up and now you can fall through it. And a new player might not know that. So I could understand how that could be a legitimate criticism of the game, and I do wish they just did a little, maybe just put one or two areas at the beginning of the game where it's obvious that's what they're trying to do. And they kind of do that, but I don't feel like they do that well enough. And that would be my only major criticism of this game. Now, I will say I've played through this game twice, and the second time I played through it, I realized that the game is somewhat linear, at least until you have all your power-ups. They're going to try to guide you the way you need to go. Like, once you can do everything and go everywhere, and you have all of Samus's abilities, and you're the all-powerful fucking goddess of that game, you can just explore and look for power-ups till your heart's content. There's nowhere you can't go. But while you're playing through it, you're going to come across tons of situations where you can't go somewhere yet. You need to go get a different ability before you can get into that area, get into this area. And when you're playing the game for the first time, you get a new ability. If I was going to give advice to a new player, look at where the game is sending you. When you get a new ability, you might have 3 or 4 options to where you could go and backtrack and find doors that you couldn't open before that you can't open now. But almost every time you get a new ability, and then the game kind of shoehorns you back towards maybe the door or the area that you need to go to now, that will continue the game. And if you go off exploring instead, there's nothing wrong with that. You can play the game however you want, but you may not be able to find your way back to that one little area that the game was kind of trying to be like, hey, you know, now that you've got these missiles, that door that you were at earlier, you can open it now. But you're like, yeah, I can also open this door, this door, and this door. You go back to those, and now you forget where that door was trying to get you to go to is. And I didn't realize that until the second time I played through it. So it can, like, the enemies can be very difficult, and the exploration can be very difficult. But the enemies are difficult because they'll kill you. The exploration can be difficult because you can get lost. And I do think the game should teach you to shoot everything when you're stuck. And I don't think it does. So if you haven't played it yet, but you plan to play it, just when you get stuck, and you will get stuck, just start shooting everything. Particularly in areas of the map where you can see that there's more areas to explore just past where you are, but you don't know how to get to them. Shooting the walls and the floors almost always will open up something and a new way for you to go. The game just really, I don't think it tells you that. I think it kind of expects you to know that. David Phillips wrote in on Patreon and said, one of the best Metroid games I've played in a very long time. The only issue I really had was that sometimes the game is not very good at conveying what it wanted me to do next. More than once I had to wander around for a while, exhausting every possible path until I found the right one forward. But maybe that's more of me overthinking and less something wrong with the game directions. No matter what, I will play again. I had a blast. And the first time I played it, I had multiple instances where I was lost as well, David. And I never got super frustrated with it, but I was literally just running around this giant map being like, I know there's fucking somewhere that I'm missing that I can go to, and I don't know where the fuck it is. So what I would advise anyone, if you're playing for the first time, when you get a new ability, before you go running off and picking up old power-ups, just look at the map. And I bet you 9 times out of 10, there's a streamlined path to somewhere where you can use that new ability you got. And all I would recommend is just go into your map and put a marker on that area, and then go off and fucking explore as much as you want. And when you're ready to continue on with the progression of the game, look for your marker and be like, that's where the game was trying to get me to go. The second time I played through, I did that, and it made a fucking huge, huge difference. And we should talk about the abilities, because as with any Metroid game, you get new abilities as you play it. And that's the secret sauce to any good Metroidvania. Obviously, Metroid is fucking like the main ingredient in a Metroidvania. There's just, dude, finding something, a power-up or a fucking door or a secret exit or something, finding something and not being able to get to it or not being able to use it is just so goddamn frustrating. But then when you get that new ability, or you get that new weapon, you get the ability to jump higher, or you get new missiles or something, and you know, now you're like, fuck, that's how I get that thing. And you can't wait to go back and get to whatever it was you couldn't get to before. that is just so goddamn satisfying. That's what scratches my itch when I play a Metroid game. I think the gameplay is great. The controls, the combat, all that kind of stuff is awesome. But it's that fucking, and it goes back to Guacamelee, Hollow Knight, the Ori games. Just insert your favorite Metroidvania here. When you pick up a new ability, that instant sense of excitement you get that you can go back and fucking, go to 5, 6, 7 places you couldn't go to before. Oh God, that's just, it's like sticking a Q-tip in your ear and just getting that exact right spot. It feels so fucking good. Fuck that too. The box says don't put Q-tips in your ear. Suck my balls, Q-tips. That's what you're fucking there for. Strife89 wrote in on Patreon and said, best game of the year for me. Classic Metroid style with small but effective improvements to abilities. I couldn't space jump to save my life in past Metroid games, but I loved it in this one. Adam, did you care to get 100% on your playthrough? I did. I 100% did a run through on normal difficulty, and then I jumped through again and played it on hard mode, and I'm very close to 100%ing it on hard mode. I wanted to get it done before I recorded this podcast, but I just ran out of time. But I have all my abilities. I'm about 90% complete on my hard mode run. I just got to go get a few more missile upgrades and stuff, and then I'm going to go fight the final boss and write it off. I don't often go for 100% of collectibles and stuff like that in video games, but Metroidvanias, when you've got the abilities to just go anywhere you want and just do a clean sweep, it's as satisfying as anything in gaming to me. And some of the power-ups that you want to get in this game, just as a heads up, some of the power-ups you're going to find are they're not only hidden very well, they are stuck behind some platforming challenges that are tough as nails. They're optional. You don't have to do them. I'm trying not to spoil any of the abilities you're going to pick up while you play, but at one point you're going to get a sprint mechanic where you click the right, I don't remember how you trigger it, but you do whatever it is to do it. And then if Samus just running like normal, she like supercharges and she's running. And then after a few seconds of that, she takes off in like a turbo sprint and she runs in that sprint until she hits a wall. And it's critical to use that ability to get some of the more hidden bonuses in the game, but it is a motherfucker to use because you've got to go find a stretch of land that is long enough for you to get to full speed and trigger your super sprint. Then you're ducking and jumping and wall jumping and shit like that to get to an area where you can use that super sprint to break through a wall. But if you touch anything or go the wrong way for even half a second, you lose all your momentum and have to go back to start. I never once found them like controller throwingly frustrating because, again, they're all optional. You don't have to do them. And I found them incredibly satisfying to pull off. And I didn't find any of them too difficult. It was more difficult to figure out what the right path was, because there's some where like you'll find an item that's hidden behind a brick that clearly needs to be broken by Samus when she's doing her super dash, and there's nowhere near there to get to super dash speed. So you literally are going off sometimes like 10, 15 seconds away before you've got an area where you can run fast enough to trigger her super speed. Then you've got to get her to that wall without losing that charge momentum. And they're optional. They are a motherfucker. But they are so satisfying to fucking pull off. My God, they're satisfying to pull off. And I feel like the controls in this game are fair. I don't feel like there's ever an instance where the controls in this game fuck you over. I think they always work fair and square. Fair and square, pardon me. Scott Brooks wrote in on Patreon and said, so I'm a Metroid drunkie and will be picking this one up soon. I just have one question. Do you recommend playing it on a bigger screen, or is it just as fun to play on a smaller screen, like with a Switch Lite? So I think, obviously I haven't played it on a Switch Lite. I have a standard full-size Switch. I think that the controls are rock solid, super tight. I did play it on my standard Switch, both docked with my 8-bit Do controller and handheld with the Joy-Cons attached on the sides. And I did find it way more satisfying to play docked with my 8-bit Do controller. I didn't find myself at a disadvantage or anything playing it handheld. I just thought the game handled better with a controller in your hands. You have to use the analog to play it. You can't use the D-pad. And normally on a 2D game, I fucking hate having to use the D-pad to play it. I like using my analogs. But for this game, the analog stick actually worked perfectly. It worked surprisingly well. I thought the controls were so crisp that there wasn't a single instance that I found myself dying because the controls failed me. That's the secret to a good game. Never once did I find the controls to be anything of a hindrance whatsoever. They were always fair, and I thought that was awesome. Yankee Doodle Randy wrote in on Patreon and said, yay, wall jumps are easy to pull off in this one. And yeah, because we already talked about this, but the wall jumps in Super Metroid are fucking awful. And the wall jumps in this game are just silky smooth and perfect. This game rewards practice. And I'm telling you, by the end of the game, you have a ton of moving parts and a ton of abilities, but you also should have a really good grasp on how to use them, because the game really forces you to make use of abilities as you pick them up, so that when you hit a point near the end of the game where you fucking need all of them, you're not in over your head. You're like, well, I know how to do my super sprint and then wall jump off and then grab this wall that I can climb up while I shoot a missile at this thing and then slide. You get all of it. So if you were to like watch somebody play at the end of the game and you've never played it, you'd be like, there's no way I could ever do this. But by the time you get there, it's taught you how to do all of it, and it seems to handle really well. To go back to running away from the E.M.M.Is, by the end of the game, dude, you're fucking sprinting, sliding under walls, going into morph ball, wall jumping, shooting blocks out of your way while you're running toward the blocks. You have no margin of error because this goddamn psycho robot hunter is fucking right on your ass, and it is just silky smooth. It's almost as satisfying as going around and picking up the collectibles is running away from the fucking E.M.M.Is. It's just, I can't say enough good things about the controls in this game. There's boss fights. There's actually a lot of boss fights in this game too, and they are fucking tough. I think they're the hardest part of the game. They're my favorite types of bosses though, because by and large, you just have to learn their patterns, their tells, their mannerisms. Every boss in the game has just a little tell that they do before they use an attack, and every attack in the game is avoidable. You just have to figure out the patterns with their tells. It's all about practicing and learning their little tells. Like I don't think it's spoiling anything to say that like there's one boss you fight, and sometimes he'll jump on the wall, so he's wall hanging, and then he'll like scream. And when he screams, if little wavy lines come out of his mouth, then I know he's about to dive at me. If he screams and little like smoke circles come out of his mouth, he's going to stay on the wall and he's going to spit like acid or something at me instead. So I know which way I need to counter to attack. And they're only going to show, like, those tells last for a half a second. It's like a Mike Tyson's punch out. Those tells last for like half a second. But if you're dialed in and you're paying attention, you learn them. And even if that boss fucking, like, dude, it's funny. A boss will absolutely fucking murder you the first couple of times you go up against one. And they fucking will, I promise. But then after 5 or 6 attempts, you might beat that boss without it ever touching you, because now you know how to avoid everything. And again, the controls are just rock solid. They never let you down. I never once found Samus not doing exactly what I wanted her to do when I wanted her to do it. And the game is difficult enough that it needs those precise controls for it to work. So I loved all the boss fights in this game. I thought when I was streaming my hard difficulty playthrough the other night, I got pretty stuck on one boss fight, and it was frustrating, but at the same time, like, I never felt once that it was cheap. It was always on me. It was like, you'll get good, man. Like, just keep practicing. You'll figure it out. And you do. And when you figure it out, it is so fucking satisfying. And I guess there are ways to, and I took shit on stream for saying it this way, so it's not a glitch. There are ways to cheese some of the bosses where you can get some abilities earlier than you should, and Nintendo put it there intentionally, and you can beat some of the bosses in one hit. I have not participated in that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. That's just not how I wanted to play the game. Maybe for like a speed run or something, that'd be cool. But I like the feeling of going toe to toe with these bosses and mastering the patterns and figuring out how to beat them. I just find that so satisfying. And the other thing is that the bosses, and basically, I don't know if every enemy in the game has this, but it's got to be like a 90% at least, including the E.M.M.Is. They have these counter things that you can counter attack them at some point. And I had mentioned during with the E.M.M.I attacks, you have 2 fraction of a second instances where you can hit X at the right moment, and then instead of the E.M.M.I killing you, you'll hit them with an elbow or a kick, and you'll stun them and you can run away. 90% of the enemies in this game and the bosses have counters like that, and they're always triggered in the exact same way. This yellow flash will pop up, and it's like a circle with like a cross in it, and it only pops up for like a half a second, but if you mash X when that fucking thing pops up, you'll stun most enemies in the game, and then when you kill them, you get way more item drops, like rockets and health and stuff like that. And some of the bosses, you actually need to hit that counter at the right moment near the end of the fight to kind of open them up to like their final phase where you can finish them off. And it's I know some people hate like quick time events. I don't feel like they're wrong in this game. I think they're great. They're so obvious that they're there, and fortunately, The only enemies in the game that will instantly kill you if you miss the counterattack are the E.M.M.Is. All the bosses, there are some bosses where once you beat them down to a certain point, it'll trigger like a cutscene where then you have to hit a counter to finish them off. But if you miss time that counterattack, then all that happens is the fight continues until you can trigger that counterattack screen again. And it only takes like a minute. It's not like you're a 10-minute fucking replay to get it back. And I love that kind of stuff because you learn to be looking for it, and you've got your thumb hovering over that X button and you're fucking ready. And the only ones that are super precise are the E.M.M.Is. All the other bosses in the game and stuff like that, you don't have like, 3-second window to hit the counter button, but you get more time than you do when you're fighting the E.M.M.Is. So, but that's, again, I really think that's a great design that they put the exact same counter attack in for all the other enemies that they did for the most deadly enemy in the game. It's just that all the other enemies, it's not that hard to counter it, whereas the E.M.M.Is, you need to be fucking picture perfect to counter it. And that just adds to the dread, pun intended, because that's, I think, why they named the game this way. It adds to the tension of fighting these enemies and running away, because you're like, I know this isn't going to be like the other fights. I have no window for error here, which I fucking love this game. Good A. Hang on a second. I got to hydrate here. Hang on a minute. Good A wrote in on Patreon and said, this game was great. I wish there was a bit more meat on the bone, as they say. I'm so glad Metroid took a step back and made the 2D version rather than the prime first-person shooter. What a great addition to the Metroid saga that has an updated look with a nostalgic feel. Yeah, I agree with all that. And Good A mentioned he wishes there was a little bit more meat on the bone. It took me, my game file said it took me a little over 13 hours to 100% of the game on normal, which was beat the game with all the power-ups and everything in the game, all the optional stuff. I don't think that counter, that in-game clock, counts times when you die. I think it only counts time between saves, because I'm almost positive. I feel like there were a couple of days where I played the game for 5 or 6 hours on its own. So I think I played longer than 13 hours. I don't think that in-game clock is counting that. I think if you die, it doesn't count the time between wherever your last checkpoint was and when you die. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel like I played it a lot longer than 13 hours. I'm playing it again right now on hard mode. I'm just about to finish it. I don't know what my in-game clock is. I'll obviously post it online when I'm done. But for those of you asking about replay value, there's limited replay value in the sense of it's not like there's all multiple endings or multiple paths. I mean, there's a couple of minor path alterations you can take and stuff like that. But I think a lot of the replay value of this game just comes from wanting to play it again, or wanting your challenge to yourself to speed run it or to beat it without all the extra power-ups and stuff like that. But it's not like you've got 5 different, decisions you make during the game that open up branching storylines or anything like that. You get one game and you can play it as many times as you want. But I felt like it was a fine length, frankly. Seriously, Ron P wrote in on Patreon and said, I think Dread did a great job of alternating between making you feel lost and telling you exactly where to go, making it seem easy and then throwing a tough boss fight in, nice and casual exploration followed by the dread of hearing those E.M.M.I beeps. I'm halfway through a second playthrough, so it even has some replay value. Throwbacks for the fans without all the seemingly fan servicey stuff. All around a great game, and I don't generally like Metroidvanias. I never even finished Ori. Fuck, Ron. I've never put someone on double secret probation on an episode of... I probably have. I was about to say I've never put someone on double secret probation during an expansion pass. Dollars to donuts, I put someone on double secret probation during an expansion pass. You're on double secret probation. Go back and finish Ori. Fucking finish the goddamn Ori games. But yeah, I agree with you. I never fucking play through new game pluses or second runs or anything like that. And I literally finished this game on normal and then jumped right into playing it on hard. I was like, I gotta play it again. So I got 2 playthroughs out of it at least. Super Dave wrote in on Patreon and said, what ideas and or mechanics from Dread do you think other games are going to steal moving forward? I don't know, because I think people have already stolen the Metroid formula. And maybe that's the wrong way to put it, but it literally has spawned its own genre. And I don't think... Metroid Dread is fucking spectacular, but I don't think it does anything so different that there's like more stuff in there for developers to take. I would like to see someone do something along the lines of what the E.M.M.Is are like in this game, but to make them more scary, because they're not really scary in this game. It's just tense. But I think you can make a great horror game like this if you wanted to, if you really wanted to make it a more fast-paced, almost like an Outlast style thing where you're running away from enemies, but make it the enemies and make it really quick. So maybe something like that. But other than that, I don't really... It's a great game, but I don't think it's breaking down any barriers and doing something so cutting edge and new that everyone's going to be like, I'm taking that now. It's just another great 2D Metroid game. And as I get ready to score this thing, dude, we had so many comments from our community praising this game. I'm just going to rip through a few of these here. Stupid Monkey said, Game of the Year contender for sure. And Keegs and his stupid arrow handle can eat shit. I agree with both of those. 8-Bit Bovey wrote in and said, it gets a 9.5 out of 10 from me. The game is an instant classic. The only part that I dread is those freaking E.M.M.I parts. It just slows the game down and gives me high school sweaty palms. That being said, it is very satisfying when I fuck them up, which I think is exactly what they're aiming for. Super Nintendo dudes wrote in and said this game is phenomenal. 11 out of 10. It's perfect. I've only played OG Metroid and Super Metroid, and it stays absolutely true to those games. Dread does a great job of lightly guiding you on your mission without feeling like the game is holding your hand. Glad to see so many people enjoying Dread. I would consider myself a pretty casual gamer, but holy shit, not with Metroid Dread. I took a work day off and did absolutely nothing other than play it. Reworked a solid ass groove on the couch. Better put on a pot of coffee. This might take a while. Shout out to anyone that gets that reference. And Black Silver said, I can't really say much more than I really love this game. Now, if only they'd remake all of the older 2D Metroid games just like this, I'd pay full price for each and every one of them. I agree with that, Black Silver. Dude, a Super Metroid remake just like this, I'd fucking just fix the wall jumping and I'll pay full price for another Super Metroid. In ways, Metroid Dread feels like Super Metroid on steroids. And that's not a bad thing at all. They took one of the best video games ever made and made it better. It was just so much fun to play. I don't think I'm ready to slap Game of the Year on the cover and just lock it in as my Game of the Year pick. But I will say when the end of the year rolls around and I do the blankies this year and I do my personal Game of the Year picks, it's a lock that Metroid Dread is a nominated finalist. There's just no way. I have been fucking completely addicted to this game since it came out. And I bought it the morning it came out, and I just have not, every chance I get, I'm picking up my Switch and just playing a few more minutes, trying to get one more, set of missiles or fucking something like that. Like I said, I never play the New Game Plus or play the hard mode, like back through it or anything. But I literally finished Dread one night, and the next morning I picked it up and started playing the hard because it's just that much fun. It might be cool if it was a little bit longer, but I also like the way that it's beatable in a reasonable time frame. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a matter of quality over quantity. You're not looking at a 60-hour investment to beat this game. I know some people equate a game's length with its worth. We've talked about that before. I fucking hate when people do that. I would much rather pay $50 for a good 10-hour experience over a mediocre 30-hour experience. I would guess that I got 25% or 25, 30 hours out of this game between my two playthroughs, I would guess. Because I don't think that clock is accurate because it's not counting the times you die. I don't think so. I was completely satisfied. I paid full price for this game day one, and I'll play this game many, many times over. I'm never deleting it off my Nintendo Switch. It's absolutely worth full price. It's a perfect example of why I love Nintendo, okay? Nintendo can fuck us around with their online and some of the weird decisions they make and their fucking Joy-Cons, and they're behind the times, and they do all these things that irritate many of us. I know that. But when Nintendo just puts their heads down and just makes a video game, they're still as elite as it gets in this industry. And this is a fucking perfect example. If I was scoring Metroid Dread out of 10, it's a 10. And I very, very, very rarely do that. You guys know this. I can't even take the Super Mario World tax off of this game. I thought it was perfect. Just go in knowing that it won't be easy. There's no easy mode. It's not going to hold your hand. You're probably going to get lost. You're going to die a lot. And you can look up guides online to tell you where to go, but I implore you to do your best not to do that, because the feeling you get from solving a puzzle and moving on without help is top shelf. Just shoot everything. That said, I know that it can get old after a while when you're playing with limited time and you're like, this is fucking stupid. The game, I'm stuck. I don't know where else to go. I get that. But 10 out of 10. This was one of the best games I've played this year. One of the best games I've ever played on the Switch. I fucking love this video game. Whew. That's going to do it for the spoiler-free portion of this game, all right? So this is your first of 3 warnings. I'm going to cue up some music in a second. Actually, I'll do it right now. When that music stops, I'll give you a final warning, and then I'm going to give you a quick spoiler cast. So if you don't want anything spoiled, thank you for listening. Bail right now. and I'll talk to you again soon. And if you do want spoilers, hang around till the music stops, okay? All right, everybody, this is your final warning. Spoilers are going to be starting in 3, 2, 1. I can't believe Samus is Princess Peach. No, I'm just kidding. Dude, so the very end of the game, when you fight Falconbeak or whatever the fuck that stupid bird's name is. What a stupid name for an enemy, by the way, in my opinion. When you like realize, okay, so it turns out, it feels so weird saying this, but I've warned you guys countless times, spoilers are coming. It turns out that Samus has become a Metroid herself, and the previous games explain all why. I'm not going to get totally into that, but you've been injected with Metroid DNA, and now it's actually overtaken to where she has become a Metroid of her own. And seeing her realize her full power near the end of the game is so fucking rad. And she looks so dope at the very end of the game. She's like, she looks mutated and like she's all green and purple with like spiky armor, and she looks so fucking cool. And then she gets in her ship and needs to take off, but then when she goes to turn on her ship, it's like, yo, don't, because you're gonna drain all the power from your ship because you're so fucking powerful now. I thought that was so badass, but then she manages to like get back to normal and she can fly away and stuff like that. I love that they brought the X virus back. I love that the X virus popped up and was part of the game and everything like that, because I thought that was one of the coolest things in Metroid Fusion, and I hope they never get rid of it because I think it's just such a rad fucking enemy. Like I said, I thought the final boss was a bit lame. I thought it was kind of a stupid name. It's just an evil crow, basically. And then I can't believe that you also find out that this boss, it feels so weird saying this, but again, we're in the spoiler part of the show. It's so odd that this fucking weird bird from another planet is Samus's father. At least that's the way I understood it. I thought that was a really weird twist, but it also explained why that bird doesn't kill you at the very beginning of the game, and he wants all your power. And I gotta be honest, I really enjoy playing Metroidvanias and playing these games. I just don't give a fuck about the story. That's just me. I really could take or leave the fucking story. It's not bad or anything, but I just want to play. So I thought the ending wasn't bad at all. I actually thought it was a great wrap up to because they're saying this is the end of the original Metroid saga, and now they're going to be starting over with something new. And I thought that was fine. I just thought it was dumb to find out like that was the big finale. Oh, your dad's a bird and you're a Metroid now. But okay, whatever. I did mention it in the actual review. Getting some of those fucking speed spark moves down is a motherfucker. I didn't think they explained how it worked all that well, to be honest with you. So that was the one thing I looked up while I was playing, is I did look up a tip on how to utilize the speed spark properly. And once I figured that out, I was fucking flying all over the place. I didn't want to get into that in the spoiler free part of the podcast because I didn't want to talk too much about all the different abilities you pick up. I thought most of the abilities by and large were cool. I love the way that they keep finding a way for Samus to lose all her abilities. Like every game she has all these abilities and it's like, oh no, we lost it, but you'll get them back. Like I thought that was they explained that very well. I did find it a little weird that all the abilities are just sitting around again like they are in every other game, but whatever, that doesn't matter. That speed spark thing takes some fucking practice. That's the hardest part of the game, in my opinion, if you want 100% it, is figuring that out. I like the way the environments changed in different levels, how sometimes they were hot, sometimes they were frozen, and the game, like the levels would play differently depending on what the environment was doing. I thought that was really cool. I thought hopping into the teleportation devices was rad. It was a great way to move around from island to island or planet to planet or whatever. But I thought the load time between the areas was a little long. And I found that to be a little bit frustrating as I was going back through the game to try to clean up. And it was like, fuck, I don't even know if this is where I need to be going right now. Let's fucking go. And then you have to wait for the load screen. But that might just be because I've been playing a lot of Series X and PS5 over the last few months, and the lead times are so minimal on those. I can't expect the Switch to keep up with that. So I can't get angry about that. I can't really think of much else to spoil. I think the game starts to open up when you get the grapple beam. The more so it opens up when you get the super jump or space jump or whatever it's called. And then when you get the gravity suit and now you're running at full speed underwater and you can go anywhere in the game like lava and ice worlds and stuff, that's when shit hits the fan. It's just, yeah, I really can't tell you guys how much I love this game. I'm torn between Deathloop Returnal and this for my game of the year right now. And if you were to put a gun to my head right now and make me pick, I would probably pick Metroid Dread. I feel no urge to play Returnal or Deathloop again. They're both longer than Metroid Dread, whereas Metroid Dread I'm playing through for a second time, and I'm like, I could fucking play through this again right now. I'm just having so much fun playing this fucking video game. Other than the fact that Samus is part bird, unless I maybe misunderstood that, but I don't think I did. This game's fucking incredible. So I don't really have anything else to put here in the spoilers. Not a ton to spoil other than like the locations of things, and that's a hard thing to spoil via a video or an audio podcast. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you made it all the way to the end, thanks for listening. I hope that I didn't spoil the game for you. I hope you've experienced it yourself. If you haven't experienced it yourself, and even after listening to this, you're like, I don't know. It's a great fucking game. If you're waiting for it to go on sale, you're going to be waiting a long fucking time because it's Nintendo. But I'm telling you, this game is worth full price. I thought this game was absolutely fucking spectacular. I'm done. Okay. I'm actually going to get this rendering, and then I'm actually going to go play a little bit more Metroid Dread. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much for the support. I'll be back next week. The expansion pass topic poll suggestions post thing is up live right now. For anyone at the $5 and up Patreon level, the next week's topic is going to be up to all of you. So get in there and leave your feedback if you haven't already. And I will talk to you all again soon. Cheers. Goodbye. Thank you.